The humidity hits like a fist the moment the Huey drops below the canopy. Cambodia, 1971. Lieutenant James Chen presses his back against the rotting trunk of a banyan tree. M16 slick with sweat in his hands. 23 years old, Stanford graduate, 3 months in country. The intelligence said this village was clear. Civilian population only. No NVA activity for 6 weeks. The intelligence was wrong. The first mortar round explodes 15 feet to his left, sending Sergeant Marcus Henderson diving into the mud. The second tears through the center of their formation, and Chen watches Private Rodriguez simply cease to exist. No dramatic death scene, no final words. One moment, a 19-year-old kid from El Paso. The next, red mist in scattered equipment. Henderson is screaming something, but the ringing in Chen's ears turns everything into underwater noise. He sees the muzzle flashes from the tree line, sees the rest of his team returning fire, sees the reality that their 8-man recon unit just walked into a battalion-strength ambush because someone back in Saigon marked a map with confidence instead of verification. Chen tries to move, tries to reach Henderson. The third round hits close enough that the concussion lifts him off his feet and slams him into the tree trunk. His last thought is of his 3-year-old son back in San Francisco. A boy named Marcus who will grow up wondering why his father never came home. Henderson survives, barely. He drags himself through 2 miles of jungle with a shattered femur and arrives at the extraction point alone. Sole survivor. The after-action report uses words like unfortunate and incomplete intelligence picture and acceptable losses. Henderson reads those words in a hospital bed in Da Nang and feels something crack inside his chest that will never fully heal. 53 years later, that crack is still there. Camp Pendleton, California, present day. 1847 hours. Captain Sarah Mitchell walks through the main gate with visitor credentials clipped to her waistband and a carefully constructed lie written across her entire presence. She wears civilian clothes, olive green t-shirt, faded jeans, dark hair loose past her shoulders, making her look younger than 27. No rank insignia, no unit patches. Nothing to identify her as one of the youngest SEAL team commanders in naval special warfare history. That's exactly the point. 8 months ago, Sarah had held Lieutenant Marcus Chen Jr. in her arms as he bled out in a doorway in Kandahar. Marcus, her best friend since BUD/S, the man who taught her to navigate by stars when their GPS failed, who'd stood beside her through 3 deployments and never once doubted her capability, who had a daughter named Sophie who would turn 5 next month without her father. The operation was supposed to be surgical. 3 hostiles, minimal resistance, clean extraction. The intelligence from Marine Force reconnaissance had been detailed, comprehensive, confident. The intelligence was catastrophically wrong. 12 hostiles, fortified positions, grenades that shouldn't have existed in that compound. Sarah had watched 3 of her operators die because someone prioritized confidence over verification, because arrogance masqueraded as competence, because the same disease that killed Marcus Chen Sr. in Cambodia had metastasized across 50 years and murdered his son in Afghanistan. Now Sarah is here to cut out the cancer at its source. Bravo Company occupies the eastern section of Camp Pendleton, and their reputation precedes them like a toxic cloud. 42 Marines who operate with the collective swagger of men who've never faced real consequences. Their mess hall is exactly what Sarah expects: loud, aggressive, territorial. The kind of space where dominance is currency and weakness is blood in the water. She finds a corner table and sits down with a notebook. The first Marine notices her within 90 seconds. Hey you. Sarah looks up. A young Lance Corporal was staring at her from 2 tables away, confusion written across his face. This is a restricted mess hall. Marines only. You authorized? Just observing, Sarah says simply. Observing what? Everything. The lance corporal frowns. He turns to his friends, mutters something Sarah doesn't try to hear. She keeps writing. Notes on body language, power dynamics, the way Sergeant Rick Dalton holds court at the center table like a king whose crown is slipping. The way Corporal Jake Murphy sits at his right hand, all muscle and menace, the physical enforcement of Dalton's eroding authority. 7 minutes pass. Murphy stands up, 6'4", 240 pounds, shaved head gleaming under fluorescent lights, knuckles scarred from too many fights won through violence rather than skill. He crosses the mess hall with the slow, deliberate steps of a predator who's never met anything dangerous. "Excuse me, sweetheart." The word drips condescension. "Think you're in the wrong place." Sarah doesn't look up from her notebook. "I don't think so. This is a Marine mess hall. You're not a Marine." Observation noted. Murphy's jaw tightens. "I asked you a question." "No, you made a statement. There's a difference." A few Marines nearby stop eating. This is getting interesting. "Okay, smartass." Murphy plants both hands on her table and leans forward. "Let me make this clear. You don't belong here. Whatever you're doing, do it somewhere else." Sarah finally looks up, meets his eyes without flinching, studies him with a cold assessment of someone evaluating a threat and finding it manageable. "I'll leave when I'm finished." "You'll leave when I tell you to." "No, I won't." The standoff lasts exactly 3 seconds. To Murphy, it probably feels like drowning. He straightens up, confused by her total lack of reaction. "Fine, stay, but don't blame me when someone decides you need an attitude adjustment." He walks away. Sarah writes another note. Subject: Murphy J. Aggressive, territorial, uses physical intimidation as primary conflict resolution, responds poorly to non-compliance, likely escalation pattern. 15 minutes later, Dalton notices her. "Murphy, who's the girl in the corner?" Murphy shrugs. "Some civilian. Told her she was in the wrong place. She didn't listen." "She's been writing in that notebook for 30 minutes. Dalton's eyes narrow. Something about Sarah's presence bothers him. The way she sits, the way she observes, the complete absence of nervousness. "Go find out what she's writing." Murphy grins. With pleasure. He crosses the mess hall again. Every Marine watches. Sarah sees him coming but doesn't close her notebook. "What you writing there, sweetheart?" "Notes." "Notes about what?" "Things I've observed." Murphy grabs the notebook before Sarah can react. His massive hand closes around it and yanks it away. "Let's see what's so important." Sarah's voice goes cold, flat. "Give that back." "Or what?" "Or you'll regret it." Murphy actually laughs, loud enough for the whole mess hall to hear. "You threatening me, little girl? You know who I am?" Corporal Jake Murphy. Failed Ranger School qualification twice. 17 informal complaints for aggressive behavior. None resulting in formal discipline because your command protects you. Divorced, no children. Drinks excessively on weekends. Sarah pauses. "Shall I continue?" The laughter dies in Murphy's throat. "How the hell do you know that?" "I know a lot of things, Corporal. Now give me my notebook." Murphy's confusion is shifting to anger. "I don't know who you think you are, but you need to learn some respect." "Respect is earned, Corporal, not demanded." That's when Murphy makes his decision. He reaches out and grabs Sarah's ponytail, wraps his fingers into her dark hair and pulls backward, forcing her head back at a painful angle. The mess hall goes silent. 42 Marines watch. Not one of them moves. "I think you need a lesson in manners, sweetheart." Sarah doesn't cry out, doesn't struggle. She simply looks at him with eyes that hold no fear whatsoever. Just calculation, assessment, memory. "You're making a mistake. The only mistake here is you thinking you can walk into my mess hall and disrespect Marines." Dalton has stood up from his table, walking over to watch. His expression mixes amusement with something darker. "Problem, Murphy?" "No problem, Sergeant. Just teaching this civilian some manners." "She give you trouble?" She's got a smart mouth, thinks she knows things about us. Dalton looks down at Sarah. That's so? What kind of things? Sarah's voice doesn't waver despite the hand twisted in her hair. Nothing you'd want to hear, Sergeant. Try me. Staff Sergeant Rick Dalton, 38 years old, 2 tours Afghanistan, 1 Iraq, Bronze Star with Valor. But your performance reviews have been declining for 18 months. Your commanding officer submitted a behavioral concerns memo last quarter, and you wake up every night at 0300 from the same nightmare about a checkpoint in Fallujah where you made the wrong call. Dalton's face goes pale, then red with fury. Who the hell are you? Someone you should have treated with respect. Murphy, let her go. Murphy releases her hair, confusion and anger warring on his face. Sarah calmly reaches up and smooths her ponytail back into place. Thank you. Don't thank me. Dalton's voice is tight. I want answers. Who are you? Why are you here? And how do you know things that are supposed to be classified? Sarah stands slowly. My name is Sarah. I'm here to observe. And the things I know, you'd be amazed what's available to someone with the right clearance. Right clearance for what? That's need to know, Sergeant. And right now, you don't need to know. Dalton steps closer, using his size to intimidate. It doesn't work. Listen to me carefully. I don't know what game you're playing, but this is my unit, my mess hall, my Marines. You don't walk in here and start making notes and dropping classified information like you own the place. I'm not trying to own anything, Sergeant. I'm just doing my job. What job? Sarah's smile widens slightly. Observation. The tension is thick enough to cut. Dalton's hands are shaking now. He's losing control of a situation he should dominate. I want you out of my mess hall. Now. I'll leave when I'm finished. You'll leave when I tell you to. No, Sergeant, I won't. Dalton reaches for her arm. That's when the doors explode open. The sound is a gunshot in the silence. Every head snaps toward the entrance. A man walks in wearing dress blues with 3 stars gleaming on his shoulders. General Thomas Burke, silver hair, weathered face, a voice that could command attention from a hurricane. Attention on deck! Every Marine in the room snaps to their feet, chairs scrape, boots crash together, spines straighten. Sarah remains seated. Burke walks directly to Dalton's position, stopping 3 feet away. His eyes sweep the scene. Staff Sergeant Dalton, care to explain why you're manhandling a superior officer? Dalton's face goes white. Sir, Captain Sarah Mitchell, SEAL Team 7, your new evaluator. Burke's voice could freeze lava, and based on what I just witnessed, your worst nightmare. The silence is absolute. Every Marine stares at Sarah with expressions ranging from shock to horror. The woman they threatened, the woman whose hair Murphy grabbed, a Navy SEAL captain, one of the most elite special operators in the United States military, and she holds their careers in her hands. But then Burke does something unexpected. He steps aside, and another man enters the mess hall. This man is older, early 60s. He doesn't wear a uniform, but every inch of him screams military. Straight posture, economical movements, eyes that have seen things most people only have nightmares about. He walks with a slight limp, favoring his right leg. Captain Mitchell, Burke says, allow me to introduce Colonel James Henderson, retired Special Forces. He'll be assisting with your evaluation. Henderson stops beside Sarah, looks at Murphy, looks at Dalton, and when he speaks, his voice carries 50 years of hard-earned authority. Gentlemen, I was in Cambodia in 1971 when bad intelligence killed my entire team. Only I walked out of that jungle. He pauses. Captain Mitchell's friend was killed in Kandahar 8 months ago for the exact same reason. Bad intel. Arrogant assumptions. Marines who were too confident to verify. Henderson's eyes are glacial. She's here to make sure it never happens again. I'm here because I've been waiting 53 years to fix the mistake that killed my brothers. And you just grabbed her hair in front of 40 witnesses. Murphy looks like he might vomit. Sarah stands slowly. When she speaks, her voice carries to every corner of the mess hall. I've been observing your unit for 47 minutes. In that time, I've witnessed harassment, intimidation, attempted assault, and complete breakdown of professional conduct. She looks at Murphy. You grabbed my hair because you thought I was weak, because you saw a woman and assumed victim. She looks at Dalton. You attempted to physically remove me because you couldn't stand someone challenging your authority. She looks at the rest of the Marines. And none of you did anything. You watched your fellow Marine assault a civilian. Not one of you spoke up. Her voice hardens. 8 months ago, SEAL Team 7 conducted a joint operation based on intelligence provided by Marine Force Recon. The intel was wrong. 3 of my operators died. Lieutenant Marcus Chen Jr., Petty Officer First Class David Williams, Petty Officer Second Class Maria Rodriguez. Henderson's voice joins hers. 53 years ago, my team died in Cambodia for the same reason. Lieutenant James Chen Sr., Marcus's father. Same disease, different generation. Sarah holds up her notebook. That's why we're here, to determine if this unit's culture can be fixed, or if it needs to be eliminated entirely. Based on what I've seen so far, you're not making a strong case for survival. Dalton finds his voice. Captain, we didn't know. That's exactly the problem, Sergeant. You didn't know. You assumed. You saw a woman in civilian clothes and you assumed she was nobody. Henderson steps forward. You assumed wrong. Just like the intelligence officers in Cambodia assumed. Just like the Marines in Kandahar assumed. And people died because of it. Sarah turns to Burke. Sir, I have enough documentation to recommend immediate dissolution of this unit. Burke nods slowly. That's your assessment. Based on 47 minutes of observation, yes. Burke looks at Dalton, at Murphy, at the 40 Marines standing at rigid attention with terror in their eyes. Staff Sergeant Dalton, you have something to say? Dalton swallows hard. General, sir, we made assumptions, bad ones, but if the captain would give us a chance to demonstrate that we can change. Can you? Sarah's voice cuts through. Can you actually change, Sergeant? Or will you just learn to hide your behavior better when someone's watching? That's what I thought. Sarah turns toward the door. Captain. The voice comes from the back of the room. Quiet, young, uncertain. Private First Class Daniel Torres. Sarah stops. Yes, Torres steps forward. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Granted. I've been in this unit for 4 months, and you're right. Everything you said, it's true. The harassment, the intimidation. His voice steadies. But not everyone here agrees with it. Some of us just didn't know how to fight it. We didn't have any support. He looks at Dalton, then Murphy. What they did to you tonight was wrong. But if you shut down this unit, the Marines who actually want to do the right thing get punished along with the ones who don't. Sarah studies him. What's your name? Private Torres, ma'am. Daniel Torres. How old are you, Torres? 22, ma'am. You know you just publicly challenged your senior NCOs. That takes courage, or stupidity. Often the same thing, ma'am. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiles. Henderson speaks up. Captain Mitchell, a word? Sarah turns to him. The old colonel's face is carved from stone, but his eyes hold something she recognizes. The weight of the dead. Sir? I've been carrying Cambodia for 53 years, Henderson says quietly. Every day I wake up and see their faces. Chen, Rodriguez, Williams. 7 good men who died because someone in Saigon was too arrogant to verify their intelligence. He pauses. I came out of retirement for this evaluation because I thought destroying this unit would give me closure. Justice. He looks at Torres. But that kid just showed more courage than I've seen in half a century. He spoke truth to power, knowing it could destroy his career. That's not the action of someone in a unit beyond redemption. Henderson turns back to Sarah. I'm not saying we forgive them. I'm saying maybe we give them the same chance nobody gave us. The chance to learn from our dead before they create their own. Sarah is quiet for a long moment. Burke watches her. Henderson watches her. 42 Marines hold their breath. Finally, Sarah speaks. 48-hour evaluation extension. Practical assessment rather than observation only. She looks at Dalton. If you can locate and capture me in a controlled exercise, the unit survives. If you can't, she lets the implication hang in the air. Burke raises an eyebrow. You're proposing a one-woman exercise against 42 Marines? I'm proposing an opportunity for this unit to prove they're more than what I witnessed tonight. Dalton steps forward. Captain, we accept. Whatever parameters you set, we'll meet them. Sarah's eyes are cold. Understand something. This isn't mercy. This is validation. If you fail, I'll have proof that this unit is beyond rehabilitation. Henderson adds, and if you succeed, then we start the real work, the hard work of transformation. Sarah checks her watch. The exercise begins at 0600 tomorrow. Your objective is to locate and capture me within 48 hours. Rules of engagement will be provided at 0500. She walks toward the door, then stops. Oh, and Sergeant Dalton. Yes, ma'am. The intelligence for this exercise will include some contradictory information. I'd recommend you verify before you assume. She walks out without another word. Henderson lingers for a moment. Gentlemen, I've known warriors from a dozen conflicts. Right now, you represent the worst. But Private Torres just showed you what the best looks like. The question is whether you're brave enough to follow his example. He follows Sarah out. General Burke remains. Dismissed. 42 Marines stand in stunned silence. Finally, Dalton speaks. Murphy, Martinez, Brennan, my office, now. As they file out, Torres remains behind. He looks at the door where Sarah and Henderson disappeared. For the first time since joining this unit, he feels something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. But in the parking lot outside, Sarah Mitchell sits in her vehicle with her hands shaking. She presses her palms against the steering wheel until the trembling stops. Henderson appears at her window, taps gently. She rolls it down. You okay, Captain? Honestly, no, sir. I'm not. Henderson nods. Good. That means you're human. The day this stops affecting you is the day you need to quit. They grabbed my hair, Colonel, just like the insurgent who grabbed Maria Rodriguez before he shot her. I was 10 feet away. I couldn't reach her in time. And tonight, for just a second, I was back in that compound. But you didn't freeze. You didn't panic. You completed the mission. Is the mission worth it? Worth reliving trauma? Worth giving these people a chance they probably don't deserve? Henderson is quiet for a moment. In 1971, I was a 20-year-old sergeant who thought I knew everything. I was arrogant, disrespectful to anyone who wasn't Special Forces. He pauses. And then Cambodia happened. And I watched better men than me die because someone else's arrogance infected our intelligence chain. What changed? Sarah asks. I did, because a captain named Morrison pulled me out of that jungle, and instead of writing me off as another dead-end soldier, he spent 3 years teaching me what real leadership looked like. He saw potential in me when everyone else just saw a broken kid with survivor's guilt. Henderson meets her eyes. You see anything in there worth saving? Sarah thinks of Torres. Maybe 1 kid, maybe 2. That's 1 more than I expected, and 1 is enough to start with. Sarah nods slowly. 48 hours, then we see what they're really made of. And Captain, for what it's worth, you handled that perfectly. Marcus would be proud. Sarah's eyes glisten. Both of them, I hope. Both of them, Henderson confirms. The father I knew and the son you knew. This is for both of them. He walks away. Sarah watches him go, then looks at her notebook. 47 minutes of observation, 42 Marines, 1 possible path forward. Tomorrow the real test begins. She pulls out her phone and looks at the last photo Marcus Chen sent her. Him with his daughter Sophie, both of them smiling, both of them believing he was coming home. "I'm trying, Marcus," she whispers. "I'm trying to make sure Sophie never gets another visit like the one I had to make." The photo doesn't answer. Photos never do. Sarah wipes her eyes, starts the engine, and drives into the California night. 48 hours until she finds out if redemption is possible. 48 hours until she learns if the ghost of Cambodia can finally rest. The briefing room at 0500 is packed with exhausted Marines who haven't slept. Murphy's hand still tingles with the phantom sensation of Sarah Mitchell's hair between his fingers, and the shame burns hotter than any physical wound. Captain Mitchell walks in exactly on time. Colonel Henderson follows 3 steps behind. Both wear tactical gear now. Sarah's SEAL trident gleams on her chest. Henderson's old Special Forces patch sits on his shoulder like a ghost from another war. "Good morning, gentlemen," Sarah says. A few mumbled responses. "I said good morning." "Good morning, ma'am." 42 voices united in fear. "Better." She opens a folder. "Here are the parameters. Your objective is to locate and capture me within 48 hours. The operational area is the entire Camp Pendleton training complex, approximately 36 square miles." Someone in the back whistles softly. "You will have access to standard patrol equipment, training ammunition only. Capture is defined as physical restraint lasting longer than 10 seconds. If you tag me with training rounds, that counts as elimination. If I tag you, you're out." Dalton raises his hand. "What about you, ma'am? What equipment do you have?" Sarah smiles slightly. "The same as you. Training weapons, basic survival gear, nothing special." Henderson steps forward. "Captain Mitchell will be using tactics I developed in Vietnam. SOG fieldcraft, pre-GPS navigation, old-school methods you've probably never encountered." "And the contradictory intel?" Dalton asks. Sarah pulls 3 documents from her folder and hands them to Dalton. "These are intelligence reports from 3 different sources. Colonel Henderson helped prepare them based on real operations from 1971. The first report suggests Sarah will head for the northern hills, using elevation and dense brush for guerrilla-style evasion. Detailed coordinates, movement predictions, professional formatting. The second claims she'll go urban, hiding in the maintenance facilities, multiple building layouts included. The third indicates constant mobility, never staying in one location more than 30 minutes. Sparse information, almost too simple. "How are we supposed to know which is accurate?" Dalton asks. "Verify," Sarah says simply. "Cross-reference, use your judgment, or don't, and see what happens." Henderson's voice cuts through. "In Cambodia, we had 3 intelligence sources. All claimed different enemy positions. We chose the most detailed report because it looked the most professional." He pauses. 7 men died because confidence isn't the same as accuracy." Sarah checks her watch. "The exercise begins in exactly 1 hour. I'll have a 5-minute head start. After that, I'm fair game. And so are you." She turns to leave, then stops. "In Kandahar, the Marines who provided our intelligence were absolutely certain they were right. They had multiple sources. They had experience. They had confidence." Her voice goes cold. "They were also wrong. And Marcus Chen died because of it. Don't make the same mistake his father's team made 50 years ago." She walks out. Henderson follows. The door closes, leaving 42 Marines staring at 3 intelligence reports. Dalton gathers his inner circle. Murphy, Corporal Danny Martinez, the unit's intelligence specialist. Lance Corporal Wyatt Brennan, tactically sharp. The 4 men who will make or break this unit's survival. "Talk to me," Dalton says. Martinez studies the reports. "The Northern Hills report has the most detail. Specific grid coordinates. It looks professional." "That's what makes me nervous," Brennan says. "Too professional." Murphy slams his fist on the desk. "She's one woman, 1 against 42. How hard can this be?" Hard enough that a three-star general flew in personally to watch, Dalton snaps. She's a SEAL team commander with 3 combat deployments. Colonel Henderson survived Cambodia when everyone else died. Between them, they have more combat experience than this entire unit combined. Murphy falls silent. Martinez taps the third report. What if the simplest answer is actually correct? SEALs operate on efficiency, minimum signature, maximum mobility. This report describes exactly that. Brennan nods. And the colonel said she'd be using Vietnam-era tactics. SOG teams stayed mobile, never established patterns. Dalton stares at the reports, the weight of 42 careers pressing down, the tremor in his hands, the craving for a drink gnawing at his insides. Sir? Murphy's voice is uncertain. What do we do? Dalton takes a breath, makes a decision that goes against every instinct. We don't choose one report. We verify all 3, split into teams, check every claim. We build a composite picture from confirmed facts, not assumptions. Martinez looks surprised. That'll take hours. We have 48, and she said the real lesson isn't about catching her, it's about how we try. At exactly 0600, a signal flare arcs across the pre-dawn sky. Sarah Mitchell is already gone. 20 hours in, Bravo Company has found exactly nothing. Murphy leads the northern team through dense brush, 12 Marines in formation. They find evidence. Fabric caught on a branch matching Sarah's gear. Footprints in soft earth leading deeper into the hills. We got her, Murphy says into his radio. Northern sector. But something bothers him. The fabric is too perfectly placed. The footprints too obvious. He's been hunting since he was 8 years old, and he knows the difference between natural sign and manufactured trail. Hold position. He studies the ground more carefully. The footprints are too uniform. Nobody running through rough terrain leaves tracks this consistent. The fabric, the tear is clean, cut deliberately. Base, this is northern team. Disregard previous. We're being baited. 3 miles away, Sarah Mitchell watches through binoculars. She'd planted that evidence at 0530. She smiles slightly as Murphy's team stops, regroups. Smart, she murmurs. You're learning. Henderson's voice crackles in her earpiece. Murphy just saved his team from a 6-hour chase. Progress, small but real. By hour 15, she's eliminated 5 Marines. 3 from Murphy's northern team, ambushed from behind. 2 from the urban search, picked off when separated. Each elimination is surgical. She appears, tags them, and vanishes. You're dead, she tells each one. Return to base. Think about why you got separated. At hour 18, Dalton calls a halt. 25 Marines remain in field. 5 eliminated. 0 progress on locating Sarah. Martinez spreads a map on a Humvee hood. Sir, we need to talk about our approach. I'm listening. We're treating this like a manhunt, like she's trying to escape. But she's not escaping, she's engaging. Every elimination has been a counterattack on teams that got too focused on pursuit. Brennan nods. She's using our momentum against us. We spread out. She picks off stragglers. We concentrate. She avoids contact. Torres, quiet until now, speaks from the edge. What if we stop fighting her? Everyone turns to look at him. Explain, Dalton says. Torres steps forward. She said this isn't about winning or losing. It's about learning. What if instead of trying to capture her, we try to understand what she's teaching? That sounds like surrender, Murphy growls. No, Henderson's voice cuts through. The old colonel walks into the circle. That sounds like wisdom. He looks at Torres with approval. In 1971, we spent 3 days trying to fight our way out of Cambodia. Fighting got 6 men killed. It was only when we stopped fighting and started thinking that I made it to extraction. Sometimes the bravest thing is admitting you're taking the wrong approach. Dalton's jaw tightens. Every instinct screams to keep pushing. What are you suggesting, Colonel? Henderson pulls out a worn notebook. Captain Mitchell is using tactics from my era. I know how she thinks. You want to find her? Stop trying to hunt her like prey. Start thinking like she does. Which is? She's not hiding, she's observing. Documenting your responses. Taking notes on who learns and who doesn't. Henderson's eyes sweep the Marines. Show her you can adapt. Stop making the same mistakes. Prove you're worth saving. Martinez speaks up. Colonel, can you tell us which report is accurate? No. Sir? Because asking me to tell you is another form of assumption. You're assuming I have the answer. You're assuming you can trust my word without verification. That's exactly the disease that killed my team. Henderson's voice hardens. Figure it out yourselves. Use your brains. Build truth from evidence, not from authority. Torres speaks again. The first report is too detailed. It has information nobody could know unless she told them, which means it's designed to look credible. Go on. The second has accurate building layouts, but the movement predictions don't account for SEAL training. SEALs don't hide in buildings. They use them as waypoints. And the third? The third is sparse because it's honest. It basically says, she'll move constantly and you won't predict her. That's not intelligence failure, that's accurate assessment. Martinez is nodding. We've been looking for the most detailed report when we should have been looking for the most honest one. Murphy swallows his pride. So what do? Brennan taps the map. We stop chasing predictions and work with what we know for sure. She's eliminated 5 Marines. Where? They mark the locations. The pattern is random except for one thing. Every elimination happened when Marines got separated. She's punishing isolation, Martinez says, teaching us that lone wolves die. No, Dalton says slowly, she's teaching us that overconfidence leads to vulnerability. We assumed we could split up safely. She's proving assumptions kill. Henderson is smiling now, not mockery, approval. Sergeant Dalton, you just had the first real insight of this exercise. What do you do with it? Dalton looks at his Marines. Young faces, old faces, all watching. He takes a breath, makes the hardest call of his career. We stop hunting. We make contact, but not to capture. We communicate. Communicate what? Murphy asks. That we're listening, that we're learning, that we understand the real test isn't about tactics, it's about humility. Martinez frowns. Sir, how do we communicate that to someone we can't find? Torres speaks up. We stop hiding our weaknesses. We admit we're lost. She's been watching us this whole time. I guarantee it. She knows where we are, so we send a message she can see. What kind of message? Torres thinks. We stand down. All of us. Weapons holstered. Formation in the open. No tactical advantage. Just 42 Marines admitting they need help. The suggestion hangs in the air. Murphy looks slapped. That's surrender. No, Henderson says quietly. That's something much harder. That's honesty. Dalton stares at Torres. This 22-year-old private showing more courage than most men show in a lifetime. Colonel Henderson, would it work? In 1971, I spent 3 days trying to fight my way to extraction. You know what finally saved me? Henderson's voice is distant. I stopped at a clearing, put down my weapon, sat in the open where the rescue helicopters could see me, made myself completely vulnerable, and that's when they found me. He focuses back on Dalton. Sometimes survival means surrendering the illusion of control. Dalton looks at his Marines, at Murphy, who grabbed a superior officer, at Martinez, whose analytical mind needs to learn to question, at Brennan, at Torres. And he thinks about the bottle waiting in his quarters, the one he hasn't touched in 40 hours, the longest stretch in 2 years. The clarity that comes with facing reality. We do it, he says. All units converge on Rally Point Alpha, weapons holstered, no defensive positions. We stand in the open, and we wait. For what? Murphy asks. For Captain Mitchell to teach us what comes next. At hour 23, 42 Marines stand in formation at Rally Point Alpha. Open ground, no cover, weapons holstered, completely vulnerable. Henderson stands to one side. This was never his call to make. The Marines have to choose this path themselves. Dalton stands at the front, his hands steady for the first time in months. No tremor, no craving, just clarity purchased through 40 hours of forced sobriety and hard truth. They wait. 15 minutes, 20, 30. At hour 23 and 37 minutes, Sarah Mitchell walks out of the tree line. She's alone, weapon holstered. She stops 20 feet from the formation and studies them. 42 men who spent a day and a half hunting her, failing, learning, who made the hardest choice warriors can make. Interesting formation, Sergeant. We're not hunting anymore, ma'am, Dalton replies. I can see that. Why? Because we finally understand what you're trying to teach us, that victory means nothing if we don't learn anything, that admitting weakness takes more courage than pretending strength. Sarah steps closer. That's quite a revelation for one day. It's been quite a day, ma'am. She glances at the assembled Marines. 42 men, weapons holstered, egos suppressed, not surrendering but choosing a different kind of strength. Who suggested this approach? Dalton nods toward Torres. Private Torres, ma'am. Sarah walks toward Torres. What made you think this would work? Honestly, ma'am, I wasn't sure it would, but trying the same thing over and over wasn't working. And my drill instructor always said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Smart drill instructor. He was a SEAL, ma'am, retired. Said the best operators aren't the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who know when to fight and when to think. Sarah's expression softens almost imperceptibly. He taught you well. She turns back to Dalton. Staff Sergeant, in the last 24 hours, your unit has demonstrated almost every failure mode I've encountered. Arrogance, assumption, aggression without purpose. Dalton nods. Yes, ma'am. But in the last 4 hours, something changed. You started verifying instead of assuming. You started collaborating instead of competing. And ultimately, you made the hardest decision any commander can make. You admitted you couldn't solve the problem alone. We learned from our mistakes, ma'am. Some of you did. Sarah's gaze sweeps the formation. The question is whether that learning is real or whether it will evaporate the moment I leave. It won't, ma'am. How can you be certain? Dalton is quiet. When he speaks, his voice is raw with honesty. Because I haven't had a drink in 40 hours, and for the first time in 2 years, I don't want one. Because I've been hiding behind aggression and bravado, because it was easier than admitting I peaked years ago. He meets her eyes. You scared the hell out of me, Captain, not because you're dangerous, though you are, but because you showed me exactly what I'd become. And I didn't like what I saw. Sarah doesn't respond immediately. When she does, her voice carries weight. Sergeant Dalton, 8 months ago, I knelt beside my best friend's body in a doorway in Kandahar. His blood soaked through my gloves. I had to close his eyes, and all I could think was that he'd trusted me to keep him safe, and I'd failed. Her voice cracks slightly, then steadies. The failure wasn't mine. It was the intelligence. But that didn't matter. Marcus Chen died, and I had to look his daughter in the eye and tell her that Daddy wasn't coming home. Henderson's voice joins hers. 53 years ago, I held Marcus's father while he bled out in Cambodia. Same circumstances. Bad intel, arrogant assumptions. I was 20 years old and I had to write letters to families explaining why their sons weren't coming home. He steps forward. 7 good men died in that jungle, and I've carried their weight every day since. I came out of retirement because I thought destroying this unit would finally give me closure. Henderson looks at Torres. But that young Marine just demonstrated more courage than I've seen in 50 years. He spoke truth to power knowing it could end his career. That's not the action of someone in a unit beyond redemption. Sarah nods slowly. Colonel Henderson and I discussed this. We're not interested in punishment. We're interested in transformation. The question is whether you're capable of it. Dalton straightens. Give us the chance to prove it, ma'am. Even knowing it will be painful, that you'll fail repeatedly, especially knowing that, ma'am. Sarah exchanges a look with Henderson. The old colonel nods slightly. 48 hours isn't enough. Real change takes time. So here's what happens next. The exercise ends now. Starting tomorrow at 0800, we begin 5 days of intensive training. Not Marines trying to capture a SEAL, Marines and SEALs learning from each other. Colonel Henderson will teach you Vietnam-era fieldcraft. I'll teach you modern SEAL tactics. Together, we'll show you what verification looks like. She pauses. This will break you down further before it builds you back up. Some won't make it. But for those who stay, who commit, who genuinely want to become better, we'll give you the tools to ensure that what happened in Cambodia and Kandahar never happens again. Murphy steps forward. Ma'am, I grabbed your hair. I treated you like you were nothing. Why would you want to help us after that? Sarah turns to face him directly. Because punishment doesn't change culture, Corporal. Education does. You grabbed my hair because you were taught that women were targets, not colleagues. That physical dominance meant superiority. Her voice softened slightly. I could destroy your career with one report, but that would only prove I'm as small as you thought I was. And I'm not. I don't deserve your mercy, ma'am. You don't. Not yet, but you can earn it. Starting tomorrow, starting with the willingness to admit that everything you thought you knew might be wrong. Henderson adds, and if you fail, then you fail, and you learn from that failure. The only unforgivable failure is refusing to keep trying. Sarah steps back. 0800, training compound. Don't be late. Come prepared to have every assumption you've ever made challenged. She turns and walks back toward the tree line. Henderson follows. 42 Marines stand in formation, processing what just happened. They didn't capture her. They didn't win by any traditional measure. But somehow, standing in that vulnerable formation, they'd passed a test they didn't know they were taking. Torres breaks the silence. That's what a real leader looks like. No one disagrees. Murphy stares at his hands, the hands that grabbed Sarah Mitchell's hair. I've been wrong about everything. Everything I thought made me strong was actually weakness. Martinez puts a hand on his shoulder. We've all been wrong. The question is whether we're brave enough to be right from now on. Dalton watches Sarah and Henderson disappear. Two warriors from different generations, united by the same ghosts. Cambodia and Kandahar. 53 years apart but connected by the same disease of arrogant assumption. All units dismissed. Rest for 6 hours. 0800 formation. Everyone, bring notebooks. We're going to be taking notes. As the Marines disperse, Torres lingers. Sergeant Dalton? Yeah, Torres. Thank you for listening. When I suggested standing down, I thought you'd shut me down. Dalton meets his eyes. Most sergeants would have, and that's exactly the problem. Captain Mitchell and Colonel Henderson are giving us a chance to become something different. I'd be a fool to waste it. He clasps Torres's shoulder. You saved this unit today, Private. When this is over, when we've earned our redemption, I'm recommending you for officer candidate school. Torres's eyes widen. Sir, I'm just the bravest Marine in this unit. Own it, Torres. Own it and help me teach these other knuckleheads what real courage looks like. Torres nods, unable to speak. Dalton walks away, his hands steady, his mind clear. 40 hours sober. 40 hours of facing reality. 40 hours of discovering that the man he'd become was a pale shadow of the man he could be. Tomorrow, the real work begins. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Staff Sergeant Rick Dalton sleeps without nightmares. And 20 feet away, Captain Sarah Mitchell sits with Colonel Henderson, reviewing notes. They surprised me, she admits. I expected them to keep hunting. I didn't expect Torres to suggest standing down. Never underestimate the power of one good man in a bad culture, Henderson says. In Cambodia, it was Captain Morrison who pulled me out of the darkness. Here, it's Torres lighting the way. You think they'll make it through 5 days? Some will, some won't, but enough will that this unit survives. And the ones who make it will be missionaries. They'll spread what they learned. Sarah looks at the photo she carries. Marcus Chen with his daughter. I hope you're right, Colonel, because if this fails, then Marcus died for nothing. He didn't die for nothing, Henderson says firmly. He died because the same mistake killed his father. But we're here to make sure that mistake dies with us, that the chain breaks, that the ghost of Cambodia finally rests. He stands. Get some sleep, Captain. Tomorrow we begin the transformation, and transformation is never easy. After he leaves, Sarah sits alone. She thinks about Marcus, about his father, about 53 years of the same mistake echoing through generations, about 42 Marines who just chose the hard path. She thinks about Torres, speaking up when silence was safer, about Dalton, admitting his addiction, about Murphy, asking why she'd help him. And she thinks about what Colonel Henderson told her, that one person is enough to start with, that redemption begins with a single choice, repeated over and over until it becomes character. Tomorrow, they find out if Bravo Company has the strength to make that choice. But tonight, in 42 bunks across Camp Pendleton, Marines sleep with something they haven't felt in years: hope. Day 1 begins at 0500 with flashbang grenades and Colonel Henderson's voice cutting through chaos. Move! Move! Contact front! 42 Marines scramble from bunks, half-dressed, disoriented. By the time they assemble, Sarah Mitchell has started her stopwatch. 4 minutes, 17 seconds. In Cambodia, Colonel Henderson's team had 90 seconds from first contact to total engagement. In Kandahar, my team had 2 minutes. You just died. All of you. Henderson steps forward, leaning on his cane. In 1971, we slept in our boots. Weapons within arm's reach. Full gear staged for immediate movement. Because survival wasn't about comfort, it was about seconds. Tomorrow, Sarah says, you have 3 minutes. Day after, 2. By day 5, you respond in under 60 seconds, or we start over from day 1. No one complains. Gear up. Training ground in 15 minutes. Bring your assumptions. We're going to destroy them. The morning session focuses on intelligence verification. Henderson runs it like a master class. He spreads 3 maps across a table. One from 1971 Cambodia, yellowed and creased. One from Afghanistan, one fictional, designed for this training. These show the same problem separated by 50 years, Henderson begins. Cambodia, my team received intel that this village was clear. The source was a South Vietnamese officer we'd worked with. Trusted source. Multiple confirmations. He pauses. 7 men died because that source was compromised. The NVA had turned him 3 weeks prior. Every piece of intelligence was designed to walk us into an ambush. Martinez leans forward. How did you survive, sir? Luck. And the fact that Private Chen, Marcus's father, didn't trust the intel. He insisted we approach from a different direction. I overruled him because I trusted the source more than his instincts. Henderson's voice goes hollow. He died proving he was right. Sarah takes over, pointing to the Afghanistan map. Kandahar, 8 months ago. Marine Force Recon provided intelligence that this compound held 3 hostiles. The source was signals intelligence, drone reconnaissance, human assets, multiple independent confirmations. She traces the approach route. We breached here, standard entry, and walked into 12 hostiles with fortified positions. Lieutenant Marcus Chen Jr. died in this doorway. Same surname as his father. Same faith in compromised intelligence. 53 years apart. Torres raises his hand. Ma'am, how do you verify without disrespecting sources? By understanding that verification isn't distrust, it's due diligence, Sarah responds. Colonel Henderson, show them the alternative. Henderson pulls out handwritten notes from 1971. This is what I should have done. Chen suggested we send a scout team 12 hours before main assault. Small footprint, observe only, confirm or deny. Would have added half a day, but would have identified the ambush. He looks at each Marine. I said no because I was impatient, because I trusted the source, because I thought verification was a waste of time, and 7 men died for my arrogance. Henderson's eyes sweep the formation. That's the disease we're here to cure. The belief that rank equals correctness, that confidence equals accuracy, that questioning intelligence is the same as questioning authority. It's not. It's called survival. The afternoon brings practical application. Sarah and Henderson design a scenario, a building occupied by hostile forces. Standard breach and clear. Intelligence from 3 sources, all with different assessments. Your mission is to clear this building, but first you verify the intelligence. You have 2 hours. Begin. The Marines split into teams. Martinez leads intelligence analysis. Brennan coordinates reconnaissance. Murphy volunteers for the scout team. Torres helps synthesize information. The first source claims 5 hostiles. The second says 8. The third suggests possible IEDs but can't confirm count. Martinez spreads the reports. 3 sources, 3 numbers. How do we verify? Torres points to the building. Visual confirmation first. Count windows, identify movement, basic observation. That takes time, Murphy says. What if we breach and the count is wrong? Torres counters. What if there are 15? What if those IEDs are real? Brennan sets up observation posts at 3 angles. For 90 minutes they watch, count shadows, note entry points, identify potential IED placement. Final assessment, 7 hostiles, 2 possible IEDs at main entrance. Alternative entry through northwest window, 2nd floor. How confident? Dalton asks. 70%, Martinez admits. Is 70% good enough to risk lives? In the old Bravo company, 70% would have been plenty. Torres speaks carefully. Sir, what if we're asking the wrong question? Instead of, is 70% good enough, what if we ask, how do we get to 90% without excessive delay? Henderson, observing nearby, smiles. Suggestions? Send a micro-drone through that broken window, Brennan says. 2-minute reconnaissance. Visual confirmation. Do it. The drone takes 3 minutes and confirms 7 hostiles, identifies IEDs as training dummies, reveals northwest window entry as viable, but exposed. Martinez updates the assault plan. They breach from 2 directions. The operation takes 11 minutes, 0 casualties, all objectives achieved. Sarah and Henderson approach. Time from intelligence receipt to assault? Sarah asks. 2 hours, 6 minutes, ma'am, Dalton responds. In a real operation, that's a lifetime. Hostiles could escape. Yes, ma'am. So why take that long? Dalton meets her eyes. Because 2 hours of verification is better than a lifetime of regret, ma'am. Because Marcus Chen's father asked for time to verify and was denied, and 7 men died. We took 2 hours because 2 hours saves lives. Sarah studies him. Correct answer, Sergeant. In 5 days, we'll teach you how to verify faster. But first, you needed to understand why verification matters. You just proved you understand. Henderson adds, in Cambodia, if I'd taken 2 hours to verify, I'd have had 7 men at my retirement ceremony instead of carrying 7 names in my head for 53 years. Day 2 breaks them differently. Sarah introduces assumption mapping. She presents a scenario, a high-value target in a remote compound. Intelligence suggests he's alone except for 2 bodyguards. Mission is capture. Plan the operation, but first list every assumption you're making, every piece of information you're accepting without verification. Write it all down. The Marines struggle. Torres starts. Assumption 1. The target is actually at the compound. Assumption 2, Martinez adds, that 2 bodyguards means only 2. Murphy contributes. Assumption 3, that capture is possible. We're assuming he'll surrender. The list grows. 20 assumptions. 30. 47 different assumptions embedded in what seemed straightforward. Now identify which assumptions are critical. Which ones, if wrong, would get people killed? They narrow to 12 critical assumptions. Sarah teaches them how to design verification protocols for each, how to build confirmation triggers, how to create decision points where they can abort if assumptions prove false. Henderson watches with wonder. In my time, we just executed. We didn't have this analytical framework. And 7 men died because of it, sir, Torres says quietly. Yes, they did. Which is why this matters. You're learning in 5 days what took me 50 years of guilt to understand. Day 3 introduces Henderson's Vietnam-era fieldcraft. Henderson teaches map reading without GPS, how to navigate using terrain features in Dead Reckoning, how to estimate distances by sound, judge enemy strength by dust signatures. In Cambodia, we didn't have satellites or drones or digital anything. We had maps, compasses, and the ability to read our environment. And that's what kept me alive when everything else failed. He takes them into rough terrain and systematically removes their technological advantages. No GPS, no radios, no digital tools. Navigate to Rally Point Charlie, 3 miles, you have 2 hours. The first team gets lost within 30 minutes. They'd been following a GPS track mentally. The second team takes twice the allocated time. They kept second-guessing their compass readings. Torres's team arrives in 1 hour, 47 minutes. When Henderson asks how, Torres explains, "We stopped trying to be right perfectly and started being approximately correct quickly. We verified our heading every quarter mile using terrain features, adjusted, and kept moving." That is exactly right, Henderson says. Perfect is the enemy of good enough in the field. Torres just learned in 2 hours what took me 6 months in Vietnam. Sarah adds, "This is why we teach old-school methods alongside modern technology. Your GPS will fail, your radio will die, but terrain doesn't change. The fundamentals that kept warriors alive for thousands of years still work." Day 4 brings the emotional core Sarah has been building toward. She assembles the Marines and projects 3 photographs. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Jr., Petty Officer First Class David Williams, Petty Officer Second Class Maria Rodriguez. These are the 3 people who died in Kandahar. They weren't statistics. They were human beings with lives and families and futures that got erased because someone made assumptions instead of verifications. She advances to another photograph. Lieutenant James Chen, Sr., 1971, looking impossibly young. This is Marcus's father. He died in Cambodia for the same reason. Henderson stands. His voice is rough with 53 years of emotion. Chen was 23, Stanford educated, spoke 3 languages. He wanted to be a diplomat. Henderson's hands shake. He asked me to verify the intelligence, told me something felt wrong, and I told him to trust the chain of command. The room is silent. He died face down in jungle mud with a bullet through his spine. I held him while he drowned in his own blood, and the last thing he said was, "Tell my son, I'm sorry." His son, Marcus Jr., the man Captain Mitchell had to watch die in the same way 53 years later. Sarah's voice joins his. Marcus Jr. knew his father's story, knew how he died, and when we got the Kandahar brief, Marcus raised concerns, said the intelligence seemed too confident. I told him we had multiple confirmations. Her voice breaks. I told him what Colonel Henderson told his father, trust the chain of command. And he died the same way, in a doorway instead of a jungle, Afghanistan instead of Cambodia, but the same essential mistake. She advances the slides. More photos. Private Rodriguez from Cambodia. Sergeant Williams. 5 more faces from 1971. These 7 men died because I was arrogant, Henderson says. And these 3 died because the lesson from those 7 deaths didn't reach the people who needed to learn it. We're here to make sure the lesson reaches you. Murphy stands abruptly. Ma'am, Colonel, permission to speak? Granted. I grabbed your hair. I treated you like you were nothing. And now you're showing us that you lost people you loved because of the same kind of arrogance I showed. His voice shakes. Why are you helping us? Why aren't you destroying us like we deserve? Sarah walks to stand directly in front of him. Because destruction is easy, Corporal. Building something, transforming something toxic into something valuable, that's harder. That requires believing people can change. What if we can't? Then you fail, and you leave. But I don't think you're too broken. I think you're exactly broken enough to understand why this matters. Torres stands next. Ma'am, my drill instructor, the retired SEAL who taught me. His name was David Williams, Petty Officer Williams, from your Kandahar team. Sarah's eyes widen. What? He retired 6 months before Kandahar, trained me in boot camp, told me that the best warriors question everything, trust nothing without verification, never let arrogance masquerade as confidence. Torres's voice is thick. He taught me that because he knew the culture was sick. He was trying to change it one recruit at a time. And then he came out of retirement for one more operation. And he died because the disease he was fighting killed him anyway. Sarah sits down heavily. She'd known Williams had recently come out of retirement, hadn't known he'd been training recruits. Henderson puts a hand on her shoulder. He was teaching them, Sarah, just like we're teaching them now. Look at Torres. That's Williams's legacy standing right there. Torres walks to the front. Petty Officer Williams told me in my last week of boot camp that the warrior's path isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being the one who learns, who questions, who verifies. He looks at the photographs. He was preparing me for this, for a moment when I'd have to choose between following toxic culture or speaking truth. When I spoke up after the mess hall incident, that was Williams's voice. Everything I've done right, I learned from a man who died trying to fix the same problems. Sarah stands, walks to Torres, and does something unprecedented. She salutes him. A captain saluting a private. Petty Officer Williams was the finest operator I ever served with. He taught you well, Private. He'd be proud of who you've become. Torres returns the salute, tears streaming. The room sits in silence, processing the weight of legacy and sacrifice. Day 5 brings everything together. Sarah and Henderson design a final exercise incorporating every lesson. Intelligence verification, assumption mapping, old-school fieldcraft, emotional awareness of what's at stake. The scenario is based on the actual Cambodia operation from 1971, modified for training. A compound holding high-value targets, intelligence from 3 sources with contradictory information, a timeline demanding speed but requiring verification. Execute this correctly and you prove you've learned. Fail and we prove this unit can't be saved. You have 4 hours to plan and execute. Begin. The Marines work with intensity born of understanding what failure means. Dalton coordinates strategy. Martinez handles verification. Brennan manages tactical planning. Murphy leads assault. Torres serves as quality control, questioning every assumption. They identify 17 assumptions, narrow to 8 critical ones, design verification methods for each, build abort criteria, create contingency plans for 3 different scenarios. Planning takes 2 hours, 50 minutes. Execution takes 43 minutes. 0 casualties. All objectives achieved. Multiple abort triggers ready. Verification embedded at every decision point. When finished, Henderson walks through their operational area with Sarah. This is better than anything my team did in Cambodia. If we'd had this framework, this discipline, 7 men would have lived. Maybe even Chen Sr. would have made it home to watch his son grow up. Sarah nods. Marcus would have been proud, both of them. This is what they died to teach. She assembles the Marines one final time. 5 days ago, this unit was hours from dissolution. You had a culture so toxic, it endangered everyone you worked with. She pauses. Today you completed an operation that incorporated every principle we've taught. You verified instead of assumed. You questioned instead of followed blindly. You became, for this one operation at least, the operators we need you to be. Henderson steps forward. The question is whether this becomes your new normal or whether you revert the moment we leave. Dalton stands. 5 days ago, we were the disease. We were the arrogance that kills. His voice is steady. Today we're not cured. We're just beginning to understand how sick we were. But we're committed to the treatment. Every operation, every brief, every decision, we'll use what you taught us. Murphy stands next. I grabbed Captain Mitchell's hair because I thought physical dominance was strength. I know now that was weakness. Real strength is what Private Torres showed when he spoke up. I'll carry that lesson every day of my career. One by one, the Marines stand and speak, pledging to carry forward the lessons, to teach them to others, to become missionaries for verification over assumption, humility over arrogance. When they finish, Sarah pulls out a document. General Burke has approved the Henderson-Mitchell Protocol as official training doctrine. Starting next quarter, every Marine unit will receive this training. Henderson adds, your transformation isn't just saving your own unit. It's creating a ripple that will reach thousands of Marines. That's legacy, gentlemen. The ceremony concludes with Sarah presenting Dalton a shadow box. Inside is a folded flag, the Marine Corps emblem, and a photograph. 10 men, 7 from Cambodia, 1971, 3 from Kandahar, 8 months ago, all dead because of the same disease. Hang this in your ready room. Let every Marine who enters see their faces, know their names, understand what arrogance costs. Dalton accepts the shadow box with trembling hands. They won't be forgotten, ma'am. Not ever. 6 months later, Sarah receives a phone call. Captain Mitchell, this is Staff Sergeant Dalton. We're deployed. Joint operation with SEAL Team 4, Syria. Sarah's pulse quickens. Status? We had a situation. Intelligence suggested a straightforward raid. Minimal resistance. Dalton pauses. Sound familiar? What happened? Martinez questioned the intel, said it felt too confident. Torres suggested we verify before we committed. So we did. Sent a reconnaissance drone, confirmed visuals, cross-referenced with human intelligence. Sarah grips the phone. And? The intelligence was catastrophically wrong, ma'am. It wasn't minimal resistance. It was a battalion-strength force using the target building as bait. We would have walked into the same kind of ambush that killed Chen Sr. in Cambodia and Chen Jr. in Kandahar. Casualties? 0, ma'am. 0 casualties. We verified, identified the trap, adjusted our approach, and executed from a different vector. 23 Americans went home to their families because we took the time to question our assumptions. Sarah's legs give out. She sits down hard. Dalton, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, ma'am. I just wanted you to know. The Henderson-Mitchell Protocol saved 23 lives last night. We gathered the whole team afterward, showed them the photograph you gave us, explained what happened in Cambodia and Kandahar, told them they were alive because of lessons bought with blood 53 years ago. His voice breaks. Marcus Chen didn't die for nothing, ma'am. Neither did his father. Neither did Williams or Rodriguez or any of them. They died teaching us what we finally learned, and last night, their lessons saved 23 people. Sarah is crying now. Thank you, Dalton. Thank you for calling. Thank you for learning. After he hangs up, Sarah sits in silence. Then she calls Colonel Henderson. Colonel, I just heard from Dalton. Syria, the protocol worked. 0 casualties. Henderson's voice is thick. How many lives? 23, Marines and SEALs. They would have walked into an ambush identical to Cambodia and Kandahar. But they verified, they questioned, they caught the trap. Silence. Then Henderson's voice, barely a whisper. 53 years. 53 years I've been carrying Cambodia, wondering if Chen's death meant anything. And now 23 people are alive because of lessons bought with their blood. They mattered, Colonel. They all mattered. I can finally rest. The ghost of Cambodia can finally rest. 1 year later, the Marine Corps officially adopts the Henderson-Mitchell Protocol as mandatory training. Every Marine receives instruction in assumption mapping, intelligence verification, and the human cost of arrogance. The curriculum includes a mandatory segment on the warriors whose deaths bought these lessons. Lieutenant James Chen, Sr., Cambodia, 1971. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Jr., Kandahar. Petty Officers Williams and Rodriguez. 7 men from Henderson's team. Each name is spoken aloud. Each face is shown. Each story is told. Every Marine learns to say, I verify because Chen questioned. I question because Williams taught. I remain humble because arrogance kills. At the inaugural training session, Sarah Mitchell and Colonel James Henderson stand together as instructors. 2 warriors from different generations, united by shared ghosts. Henderson speaks first. I've carried Cambodia for 53 years. 7 names, 7 faces. I came out of retirement thinking I wanted vengeance. What I found instead was the opportunity to transform that culture, to turn tragedy into teaching. Sarah continues, 8 months ago, I held my best friend while he died in Afghanistan. The same way Colonel Henderson held Marcus Chen Sr. 53 years earlier, father and son killed by the same disease. I came to Camp Pendleton thinking I wanted justice. What I discovered was redemption, the chance to take broken pieces and build something beautiful. She looks at the assembled Marines. You are that something beautiful. You are the living proof that culture can change. You are the answer to 53 years of questions. You are the reason these warriors didn't die in vain. Torres, now a 2nd lieutenant after completing officer candidate school, stands. My boot camp instructor was Petty Officer David Williams. He died in Kandahar teaching the lessons we're teaching today. He told me that every warrior stands on the shoulders of those who came before. We're alive because others died teaching us. Our responsibility is to carry those lessons forward so their sacrifice continues to matter. He salutes the photographs of the fallen. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And thank you for teaching us what really matters. Every Marine in the class stands and salutes. Henderson's eyes glisten. That's it. That's the transformation complete. From arrogance to humility, from assumption to verification. He turns to Sarah. We did it, Captain. We broke the cycle. No, sir. They broke the cycle. Chen, Williams, Rodriguez, all of them. They bought the lesson with their lives. We just made sure their payment wasn't wasted. 3 years later, Sarah receives new orders. Another base, another toxic unit, another chance to transform rather than destroy. She walks into the mess hall without rank insignia, wearing civilian clothes, carrying a notebook. A young corporal approaches. Excuse me, ma'am, this mess hall is for Marines only. Sarah smiles. I know, I'm just observing. Observing what? Everything. The corporal frowns. You're going to need to leave. I'll leave when I'm finished. Something in her voice makes him hesitate. Who are you? Sarah's smile widens. Someone who's going to change your life. You just don't know it yet. She sits down and opens her notebook. The cycle continues. Not because the military is broken, but because excellence requires constant vigilance, constant teaching, constant transformation. Colonel Henderson, now fully retired, watches from the parking lot. His ghost is finally at rest, but his legacy continues. Every Marine trained in the Henderson-Mitchell Protocol carries Cambodia forward, carries Kandahar forward, carries the lesson that humility saves lives and arrogance kills. Sarah Mitchell begins writing, another unit, another chance, another opportunity to turn toxic culture into honored legacy. Because the best leaders don't just win battles, they create more leaders. They transform failure into wisdom. They leave every place better than they found it. That's the truth Sarah discovered in a mess hall where a Marine grabbed her hair. That's the legacy she carries forward. The gift she gives to every warrior who comes after. The gift of transformation. The gift of humility. The gift of understanding that questioning isn't weakness, it's survival. And somewhere, in whatever place warriors go when they fall, Lieutenant Marcus Chen Jr. and Lieutenant James Chen Sr. watch their legacy unfold across generations. Their deaths weren't meaningless. Their questions weren't dismissed forever. Their sacrifice became the foundation for a protocol that will save thousands of lives across decades. The ghost of Cambodia has finally rested, but the lessons it taught will live forever. That's redemption. That's transformation. That's the power of warriors who learn from the dead and teach the living. And it all began with one woman walking into a mess hall, one colonel who survived when his friends didn't, and 42 Marines brave enough to admit they were wrong. The transformation never stops. The teaching continues. Because every generation must learn. Verify before you assume, question before you execute, and never let arrogance masquerade as confidence. That's the Henderson Mitchell Protocol. That's the legacy of Cambodia and Kandahar. And it works. 23 lives saved in Syria, hundreds more in operations classified and unclassified, thousands to come as the training spreads. All because one captain and one colonel chose transformation over destruction. All because 42 Marines chose growth over pride. All because warriors who died 53 years apart finally got their questions answered. Their names are remembered. Their lesson is taught. Their sacrifice continues to matter. That's victory, not the kind measured in battles won, but the kind measured in lives saved. In culture transformed, in wisdom passed from generation to generation. The voice still echoes. Verify, question, humble yourself, and never assume. That voice will echo forever, and warriors will live because of it.